with few of the abdominal organs. We'll be discussing the most important organs that will be including the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, along with its blood supply, the venous supply, the nerve supply of those muscles, and also along with that, we'll be discussing the clinical importance of those organs. So first of all, we have the stomach. It's a muscular bag which is the most dilatable and most sensible part of the digestive tube or the digestive system. It is the stomach is the part which is connecting the esophagus above, and below it is connecting to the duodenum. Now, where is the stomach located? Can anyone tell me? Anyone would like to try? Where is this location of the stomach? In which quadrant of the? Nupur, would you like to try? Deebalina, would you like to try? Yes, partly left hypochondrium. So yeah, are you not able to speak? Because you all are.
Yes. Ma'am, partly left hypochondrium, partly epigastrium, and partly in the umbilical area.
Yes, excellent. The stomach, it's not located in one of the specific quadrants. It is, as Deebalina, she told us, that it's located in the epigastrium, the left hypochondrium region, as well as the umbilical region. So this is where is the anatomical location of the stomach is. Now, divisions of the stomach. The stomach is now divided into the openings of the stomachs are there. You can see these are the openings, or we can say the opening or the orifice. One is this one, the other one is down below. Then we have the two curvatures here. You can see the lower curvature, and this is the greater curvature which can be seen here. The whole curved region is a greater curvature. Then we have the anterior surface of the stomach. You can see here the anterior surface. The back side will be the posterior surface of the stomach. We have two regions. The first one part of the stomach, this whole part is the fundus of the stomach. Then we have the cardiac part. Then we have the pyloric region of the stomach. Then we have two notches in the stomach. One of them is the cardiac notch, you can see, and another one is an angularis, is an angular notch or insula angularis, which you can see it here in this picture. Then we have two sphincters. One, as the esophagus will be connected to this part of the stomach. So this is a region which will form as the esophago-stomach gastric sphincter, while duodenum will start from this part of the stomach. So this angle will, this part is the pyloric sphincter where it will form. So if you can remember easily, stomach has all the things two openings or two orifices, the two curvatures of the stomach, the two curvatures of the stomach. We have two surfaces, the two parts, the two notches, and the two sphincters of the stomach. So yeah, it was visible here very clearly. Then we have the two, as I told you before, we have the two curvatures of the stomach. So the two curvatures of the stomach, one of them is a lesser curvature, another one is a greater curvature. So this region, this part is a small curvature of the stomach or the lesser curvature, and the another one is the greater curvature of the stomach. So this is lesser curvature. It is usually J in shape, and it is the fixed part of the stomach, and it forms the upper right curved border of the stomach. This is the most dependent part because it is giving rise to the angular notch or insula angularis. And this lesser curvature is very important because if you all remember, we studied previously that this is the point of the attachment of the lesser omentum. And to this lesser curvature, the vessels of the stomach, they form an anastomosis at this point. The left gastric vessels as well as the right gastric vessels, they combine here at this point of the lesser curvature and they form an anastomosis on this part. So the lesser curvature has very much importance. It is the most fixed part of the stomach, and it is the dependent part, which is called as the insula angularis. It is the point where there's an attachment to the layers of the lesser omentum, and it is the most important place where the anastomosis of the right and the left gastric vessels occur. Now coming to the greater curvature of the stomach. So now if you can see here, this is the greater curvature of the stomach, the whole. This one was the smaller curvature or the lesser curvature, you can see. And another one, this one is the greater curvature, which is forming a very big, so it's a greater curvature of the stomach. Now this lesser curvature, it is the left border of the stomach, while the lesser curvature, it was forming the right border of the stomach. Now this greater curvature, it is a mobile part, while lesser curvature, it's a fixed part. Now this greater curvature, it is 4 to 5 times longer than the lesser curvature. It is beginning, this is the cardiac notch. So this greater curvature, it begins from the point of the cardiac notch. It goes down, it comes as the fundus, it forms the fundus of the stomach, arching to the fundus, and then it goes down. So when it goes down, if we look at the chest wall, so it occupies up to the 5th intercostal space. And then it convex goes, and then it becomes towards the left side, causing the beginning of the duodenum. It ends, the stomach starts from the lesser curvature and it ends at the pyloric orifice. It starts at the esophageal junction and ends at the pyloric orifice. It is opposite to the insula angularis, as it bulges downward as the pylorem intrum. So this is the insula angularis, and it now goes downward into the direction of the pylorus, forming another organ that begins the duodenum, or a small intestine, we can say. Now this greater curvature of the stomach, it is the point which gives attachment to the anterior 2 layers of the greater omentum, while the lesser curvature, it was giving attachment to the layers of the lesser omentum. And also along with that, it has a very important role that it forms the gastrosplenic ligament and the gastrophrenic ligament. Gastrosplenic ligament connecting the stomach with the spleen, while gastrophrenic ligament, it connects the stomach with the diaphragm. So if you can also see here very clearly in this diagram that this is if we divide the stomach into regions, this is the fundus of the stomach, this is the body of the stomach, and this lower part is the antrum of the stomach. And you can also see here very clearly that the diaphragm is lying here at the back portion of the stomach on the greater curvature side, and it has these ligaments, that is gastrosplenic and the hepatogastric ligaments as well. You can also see here very clearly from the greater curvature, it is giving the attachment to the greater omentum, as we studied previously in our lectures. Now coming to the relationships of the stomach, that how stomach, what is in anterior to the stomach, what is in the posterior relationship of the stomach. So anteriorly, the stomach, it is bounded by the anterior abdominal wall, the left costal margin, the left pleura, and the left lung. Because the stomach is lying on the left side, so everything will be coming anteriorly. All the relations will usually be coming from the left side. That is the left costal margin, the left pleura in the lung, the diaphragm, and the left lobe of the liver. Now posteriorly, all these structures that comes in the relationship of the posterior to the stomach, they form the stomach bed. Now, in the posterior relationship, you need to memorize this stomach bed or the relationships posterior to the stomach, because they ask you in the exam. They ask you directly in the questions that what is the structure which is in posterior relationship to the stomach. So any of these structures can be there in the options. So you will have to choose the correct one from it. So the stomach bed is formed by the lesser sac, the diaphragm, the spleen. As it is on the left side, so it will be formed by the left suprarenal gland, upper part of left kidney, the splenic artery, pancreas, the transverse mesocolon, and the transverse colon. The colon is covered by its mesocolon. That is why both are comes in the posterior relationship of the stomach. These all the structures are separated from the stomach by the cavity of the lesser curvature, except the spleen. So you need to remember that all of these structures, that is lesser sac, diaphragm, the left suprarenal gland, upper part of left kidney, the pancreas, the transverse mesocolon, and the transverse colon, they are all separated from the stomach by the cavity of lesser curvature. And superiorly, in the relationship of the stomach, we have the left dome of the diaphragm. Now coming to the blood supply of the stomach is supplied from the branches of the celiac artery. Now stomach will be supplying by the right gastric artery, the left gastric artery. So the left gastric artery, it arises from the celiac artery. The left gastric artery, it arises from the celiac artery, and it supplies the lower third of the esophagus and upper right part of the stomach. But the right gastric artery, it arises from the hepatic artery, and it supplies the lower right part of the stomach. So you need to understand both the differences, that right gastric artery is the one which is arising from the hepatic artery, and it is supplying the lower right part of the stomach, while the left gastric artery, it is supplying the upper right part of the stomach. Then we have the short gastric arteries. Short gastric arteries, they arise from the splenic artery. They arise from the splenic artery, and they are supplying the fundus of the stomach. And the left gastroepiploic artery, it is arising from the splenic artery, and it is supplying the stomach along the upper part of the greater curvature. Then we have the right gastroepiploic artery, which is arising from the gastroduodenal branch of the hepatic artery, and it supplies along the lower part of the greater curvature of the stomach. So if at the moment, if you don't remember that which artery arises from either hepatic artery, celiac trunk, from wherever it arises, because we haven't done the arterial supply till now, but if you can remember that which part of the stomach is supplied with which artery is the most sufficient, because once in the exam they had asked a very important question, that which part stomach, that fundus of the stomach is supplied by which artery. So the correct answer to that was the short gastric arteries supply the fundus of the stomach. So if I quickly revise it for all of you, that the blood supply of the stomach, or the arterial supply of the stomach, all the branches will be coming from the celiac artery. It is divided into the right and the left gastric artery, the right and the left gastroepiploic arteries, and then we have the short gastric arteries. The right gastric, so the left gastric artery, it supplies the upper right part of the stomach, while the right gastric artery, it supplies the lower right part of the stomach. Then we have the left gastroepiploic arteries. It is supplying the upper part of the greater curvature of the stomach. And then we have the right gastroepiploic arteries, which is supplying the lower part of the greater curvature of the stomach. So if I try to make a stomach roughly, this is the greater part. So this upper part will be supplied by the left gastric artery. So this upper part will be supplied by the left gastroepiploic artery, while the lower part will be supplied by the right gastroepiploic artery. And if we look at the side of the lesser curvature, if this is the lesser curvature of the stomach, and we look at here, the fundus will be supplied only by the short gastric arteries. So this is the fundus of the stomach, which is supplied by the short gastric arteries. There is the artery, then is the left gastric artery and the right gastric artery. So this upper part of the stomach, it is supplied by the left gastric artery. And on the greater curvature side, you can see that it is the left gastroepiploic arteries. So you can remember it very easy. That is left gastric artery on the upper right part and left gastroepiploic arteries on the upper part of the greater curvature of the stomach. Then coming to the lower right part of the stomach, it is supplied by the right gastric arteries. While if you look at your counter side part, which is the greater curvature of the stomach, the lower part, it is supplied by the right gastroepiploic arteries. And the fundus is the part which will be supplied by the short gastric arteries. Now you can see it here very clearly that this is the celiac trunk. This is the celiac trunk. Now the branches are coming from here. The short gastric arteries will be supplying the fundus of the stomach. Then we have the left gastroepiploic artery. We have the right gastroepiploic artery, the right gastric artery, which is supplying the right lower part, and the right gastroepiploic artery, which is supplying the lower greater curvature of the stomach. Then we have the left gastroepiploic arteries as well. Now coming to the venous supply of the stomach. So veins will always correspond to the arteries, and they will ultimately, all the veins, they will drain into the portal vein, which is the major vein. So we studied about the right and the left gastric arteries. So once we talk about the venous supply, so it will become right and the left gastric veins, and they both will directly drain into the portal vein. Now then we have the short gastric vein and we have the left gastroepiploic vein. It will drain into the splenic vein and then it will go to the portal vein. So these two veins, that is the short gastric and the left gastroepiploic veins, they are not directly going into the portal vein. They are going indirectly to the portal vein via the splenic vein. Then we have is the right gastroepiploic vein, which drains into the trunk of the superior mesenteric vein. So this is also an indirect vein, which ultimately will go to the portal vein. So okay, you can see here that this is the stomach, which is being supplied by the left gastric vein, which is going to the inferior mesenteric vein, and then ultimately it will go to the portal vein. The thicker one is the portal vein. Ultimately, all the branches of the veins, they will end up into the portal vein. Now coming to the lymphatic drainage of the stomach. So superior gastric part of the stomach, it drains to the superior gastric nodes. Then we have the inferior part of the stomach or inferior gastric area, which drains to the inferior gastric, subpyloric and the hepatic nodes. You can see here very clearly it is see that which part is referring to as the left gastric nodes. You can see here the right gastroepiploic nodes, the pyloric nodes, because this is the end, this is the part, pylorus part of the stomach. So these are the pyloric nodes of the stomach. And then we have the pancreatorenal area, which drains to the pancreatorenal nodes. Then the pyloric area, it drains to the subpyloric and the hepatic nodes. Ultimately, all the final drainage will go into the celiac nodes, and then from the celiac nodes, it will go into the cisterna of Kylie, which is the main lymphatic channel of the body, in which all the lymphatic finally or ultimately it drains into there. Now coming to the nerve supply of the stomach. The nerve supply of the stomach includes its sympathetic and it is supplied by the parasympathetic, both of them. The sympathetic fibers, they are derived from the celiac plexus, while the parasympathetic fibers, they arise from the right and the left vagus nerves. So both are involved in the nerve supplying part of the stomach, that is the sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic. Then this is just a quick revision that we studied previously as well, that what are the ligaments of the stomach. So the ligaments of the stomach, that is the greater omentum, the lesser omentum, the gastrosplenic ligament, the gastropharynx ligament, or gastropancreatic fold. These all are the peritoneal folds of the stomach. So you can see here very clearly that this is the greater omentum. This is the gastropharynx ligament because the diaphragm is attached here on the back side. Then this is the hepatogastric ligament. The liver, you will find the relationship in the stomach will be related anteriorly with liver. That is why it is forming a hepatogastric ligament and the hepatoduodenal ligament. We also have it here. Then we have the gastroduodenal ligament as well. So from the greater curvature of the stomach arises the greater omentum. From the lesser curvature of the stomach arises the lesser omentum. So these are the important peritoneal folds that we've already studied. It's just a quick revision of it. So now what is the stomach? A stomach is an area which can have the ulcers. In terms of clinical anatomy, if we talk about, the stomach is the area which is most common to the stomach ulcers, and it is an area which can be seen through a barium meal by doing an endoscopy. And the pain of the stomach, it is in between the region from epigastric or from T6 to T10 vertebrae. Then stomach ulcer, or it can also be known as a peptic ulcer, which can be gastric as well as a duodenal ulcer. Then we can have cancer of the stomach. If it is on the greater curvature, it will be known as the Troiser signs. Then we can either the nerve supply of the stomach can be cut, that is vagotomy. That is, we cut down the parasympathetic supply of the stomach due to depending on whatever the condition the patient has. Is it clear till here, the stomach? Can anyone quickly give a short review of the stomach? Yeah, great. So Dibelina, would you like to try just to give a short summary of the stomach?
Stomach has three anatomical parts: fundus, body, and the pyloric part. It has two curvatures. The smaller one is the lesser curvature and the larger one is the greater curvature. The lesser curvature is situated on the right side and the greater curvature on the left side. It has two orifices. One that is situated above is called cardiac orifice, and which is situated below is called the pyloric orifice. And it has two sphincters at the cardiac orifice. It is the esophageal sphincter, and at the pyloric orifice, it is the pyloric sphincter. It has two surfaces.
Oh, I think there's a net problem on your side. We can wait for a few seconds for you.
So my connection is lost.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem.
And then we got two orifices, two surfaces, two curvatures, and then we got the ligaments. At the lesser curvature, the lesser omentum is attached. At the greater curvature, the greater omentum is attached. Also, at the fundus area, two ligaments are attached. One is the gastrophrenic ligament and one is the gastrosplenic ligament. Another ligament or peritoneal fold is there, that is the gastropancreatic fold.
Mhm. Mona, would you like to continue from where Deebalina has left? Nabila, would you like to continue? Anyone? Yeah. Yeah, no worries. Deebalina, I can understand. Yeah, sometimes there can be a network connection problem. So anyone would like to continue from where Deebalina has left? Nupur, would you like to continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
Ma'am, then it is J. The lesser curvature is J shape,
Hmm.
and it is fixed part, and the
Hmm.
greater curvature is the mobile part, and the lesser curvature is the more dependent part, and the most dependent part of lesser curvature is called incisura angularis, and it gives attachment to the lesser omentum, and the greater curvature gives attachment to the greater omentum. Then the relations of the stomach anteriorly, lies the left ribs, left lower ribs, left dome of the diaphragm,
Hmm.
and skin and muscles.
Hmm.
And posteriorly lies stomach bed, and right upper part of left kidney, left suprarenal, pancreas, transverse colon, transverse mesocolon, spleen, and then did I miss something, ma'am? And diaphragm.
Hmm.
Then superiorly left dome of diaphragm.
Hmm.
Then and anteriorly left lobe of liver, also part of left lobe of liver also.
The liver. Yeah.
Then blood supply of stomach, it is supplied by the right upper part of lesser curvature is supplied by left yes, right upper part of lesser curvature is supplied by left gastric artery. Then right lower part of lesser curvature is supplied by right gastric artery. Left gastric artery is a branch of celiac trunk. Right gastric artery is a branch of hepatic artery. Then the fundus is supplied by short gastric arteries, which is a branch of splenic artery. The left upper part of greater curvature is supplied by the left gastroepiploic artery, which is a branch of splenic artery, and the left lower part of greater curvature is supplied by right gastroepiploic artery, which is a branch of gastroduodenal artery. Then the venous drainage is also similar to this only. The right and left veins, gastric veins, directly drain into the portal vein. The left gastroepiploic artery drains into the splenic vein, which drains into the portal vein, and the right gastroepiploic artery, it drains into the superior mesenteric vein, which then drains into the portal vein. And short gastric veins also drain into the splenic vein, which drains into the portal vein. So eventually everything drains into the portal vein. The lymphatic supply, the superior part is drained into the superior gastric node. The inferior gastric area is drained into the inferior gastric node, the celiac node and subpyloric node, hepatic node and subpyloric node. Then there is pyloric area is drained into the subpyloric node and hepatic node, and the pancreatolineal area is drained into those nodes, and everything drains celiac nodes. Then the sympathetic supply is by the parasympathetic supply is that of right and left vagus nerve.
And sympathetic by?
Right and left, parasympathetic by left and right vagus nerves, and sympathetic by celiac plexus, branches of celiac plexus.
Yeah, excellent.
And clinical anatomy, this is an area for ulcers. Frequent ulcers is there. If there is cancer on the greater curvature, it is called Trouse's sign. Then I remember only two.
Okay, no problem.
Pain
Yeah.
of stomach is in T6 to T10. The
Yeah.
area of T6 to T10, radiated to
Yes.
T6 to T10, and that's what I remember.
Yeah, excellent. Very well explained, Nupur. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So she explained us really very well all the points she has covered, not just from the general point of view, the arterial supply, the venous supply, the lymphatic drainage, as well as the nerve supply. She has really explained us very beautifully. So now moving on to the next part, next organ in the abdomen, that is the small intestine. So small intestine is the part of the stomach, or it is the part of the GIT tract, which is the longest part of the alimentary canal, and it is extending from the pylorus of the stomach to the ileocecal junction. Now, what is the importance of the stomach? Small intestine. It's a part where greater part of the digestion and absorption of the food takes place. So as we all know, that small intestine is divided into three parts. That is the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. So the first part is the duodenum, the second part is the jejunum, and the last part is the ileum. Where the ileum ends will begin the large intestine of the large intestine. So the small intestine, you can see here, the whole of the small intestine is seen here. This is the whole of the small intestine you can see here. So this is small intestine. It is 2.5 centimeter in diameter, and its length is 6 meter. It is that part of this abdominal cavity which is filling the almost all of the abdominal cavity. It is divided into three parts, as I already told you before, that is duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. And the duodenum is the uppermost division, which is almost 25 centimeter long, and it is C in shape, the duodenum. While the jejunum, it is 2.5 meters long. So remember, duodenum is 25 centimeter, while jejunum is 2.5 meters long. Then we have the ileum, which is the last part of the small intestine, which is about 3.5 meters long. Now duodenum. Now coming to the description of each of the individual part of the small intestine. First of all, we have the duodenum. Duodenum, it is the shortest, the widest, and the most fixed part of the small intestine. It is starting from the pylorus of the stomach, and it is ending to the duodenojejunal flexure. So if we look here in this diagram, you can see here that this is the duodenum. This whole is the duodenum. This whole part is the duodenum. Now duodenum, it is divided into four parts. That is the superior part, the descending part, the inferior part, and then comes the duodenum ascending part. Now from this part, the duodenum, it becomes continuous with the large intestine. It becomes here continuous with the large intestine. So duodenum, it's a part which is starting from the stomach. If there is there's not a stomach here in this diagram, but if you look, if the stomach will be there in this position, and from the stomach, from the pylorus end, will start the duodenum, and then it will end at the point from where the jejunum will start. It is tree-shaped area around the pancreas, and the duodenum, it can be around, if we look at all the four parts of the duodenum, that it becomes 10 inches in total together. Now duodenum, can anyone tell me duodenum is which organ? Is it intraperitoneal, retroperitoneal organ? Anyone?
Ma'am, 2 and 3 are retroperitoneal, 1 and 4 are intraperitoneal.
Any other answers? Yes, mainly it's retroperitoneal, but some part of it, it is intraperitoneal as well. So duodenum mainly is a retroperitoneal organ, but some part of it is Nupur tell us that it's an intraperitoneal organ. Now coming to the posterior relationship, that it lies, this duodenum, it lies in between the L1 to L3 vertebra levels. So if we divide it here into four parts, that is duodenum part 1, it is 2 inches. The duodenum, the second part of the duodenum, it is 3 inches is long, and the third part of the duodenum, it is 4 inches in long, while the D4, the smallest part of the duodenum is the D4, and the longest part of the duodenum is the third part of the duodenum, which is the largest part of the whole duodenum. Now you can see here very clearly that this is the first part of the duodenum where 1 is marked. Then this comes as the second part of the duodenum. Then we have the third part of the duodenum and the last part of the duodenum, which then becomes connected with the jejunum. And this is the kidney, but from the back side of that will be the stomach. Now in the posterior relationship, the vertebrae will be lying on the back side of this intestine, L1 to L3. The whole of the duodenum, it is lying on L1 to L3 vertebrae. Now coming to the first part of the duodenum, it begins at the pylorus of the stomach and it runs upward and backward on the transpyloric plane, which is the level of the first lumbar vertebra. So remember, duodenum is the part, the first part of the duodenum is lying at the level of the transpyloric plane, which is also called as the part where the first lumbar vertebra is there. Now coming to the relationships of the first part of the duodenum, anteriorly we have the quadrate lobe of the liver and the gallbladder. So if you can see here, okay, these are the posterior relationships shown. Now in the posterior relationship, in the first part of the duodenum, you will find the lesser sac, but only the first inch of the lesser sac will be there, along with gastroduodenal arteries, the bile duct, the portal vein, and inferior vena cava. Superiorly, this first part of the duodenum, it provides an entrance into the lesser sac, through which the epiploic foramen will be start. Then inferiorly to the first part of the duodenum, we have the head of the pancreas. So you can see here in this relationship that you will find the where is that? Okay, let me show you what I want to show you here is okay. So okay, these are the structure, these are the parts of the duodenum that you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the back side you will find the posterior relationship, and in the front will be the anterior parts, anterior organs which are lying anterior to the first part of the duodenum will be present. Now coming to the second part of the duodenum, it is 7.5 centimeter long, and it is that part of the duodenum which is curving around the head of the pancreas. Now this second part of the duodenum is an area which is containing two papillas, that is the major duodenal papilla as well as the minor duodenal papilla. So the major duodenal papilla is an ampulla of Vater, which is the opening for the major pancreatic duct and the common bile duct. Then we have the minor duodenal papilla, which is the opening of the accessory pancreatic duct. So that means the second part of the duodenum, it is connected to the pancreas through these papillas. That is the major duodenal papilla as well as the minor duodenal papilla. Or we can call it as the ampulla of Vater as well, which is from where the major pancreatic duct and the common bile ducts originates. Now coming to the relationships of the second part of the duodenum, anteriorly we have the transverse colon and the coils of the small intestine. Posteriorly, we have the hilum of the right kidney and the ureter. Now you can see it here that the right kidney is there and the right hilum of the kidney will be there, is below this part. The blackish one is the right kidney. And this is the second part of the duodenum that we are talking here about. And then on the lateral side, we have the ascending colon, the right colic flexure, and the right lobe of the liver. You can very clearly see here that this is the right colic flexure, and will come the right lobe of the liver, which is not visible in this picture, but once you see it, you will be more clear about these. And on the medial side of the second part of the duodenum is the head of the pancreas, the bile duct, and the main pancreatic duct. Because the main pancreatic duct means that the ampulla of Vater or the major duodenal papilla is in the medial relationship of the second part of the duodenum. Now moving on to the third part of the duodenum. The third part of the duodenum, it runs horizontally to the left of the subcostal plane, passing in front of the vertebral column. So it means that it is passing in front of which vertebrae? That is L1 to L3 vertebrae it will be passing. And you can see very clearly here that this is the horizontal part of the third part of the duodenum is horizontal. On the back side are the vertebrae in between L1 to L3 lumbar vertebrae. Now, in terms of relationship of the third part of the duodenum, anteriorly, we have the root of the mesentery of the small intestine, the superior mesenteric vessels contained within it. That means you can very clearly, it's very important to remember that some part of the duodenum, it has its own mesentery. That is the root of the mesentery, which contains this mesentery is now containing the superior mesenteric vessels as well as, and also the relationship is anteriorly with the coils of jejunum. So in the third part of the duodenum, anteriorly we have basically two structures. That is the coils of jejunum and the root of mesentery of the small intestine, which contains superior mesenteric vessels inside it. And the posterior relationship of the third part of the duodenum, we have the right ureter, we have the right psoas muscle, the inferior vena cava, and the aorta. Superiorly, similarly, we have the head of pancreas on the superior relationship, and inferiorly, we have the coils of jejunum below the third part of the duodenum. Now, coming to the fourth part of the duodenum, it's the last part of the duodenum, and it is the smallest part of the duodenum, which is running upward and towards the left to form the duodenojejunal flexure. So if I explain you that if this is the duodenum, the first part, the second part, the third part, and the fourth part, and when it becomes continuous with the jejunum here, so this portion is forming a flexure. Because this portion is turning downwards into jejunum, it will go down or it will form a curvature. So this is space, this whole space basically is the duodenojejunal flexure. Now this flexure, it is duodenojejunal is named because the duodenum is connecting with the jejunum. And now this place, it is held in position by a fold of peritoneum, which is called as the ligament of Territes, which is attached to the right crust of the diaphragm. Now coming to the relationship, anteriorly we have the beginning of the root of the mesentery of the small intestine, which will be containing the superior mesenteric vessels and the coils of jejunum. So the same in the anterior relationship of the third and the fourth part is the same. So you don't need to memorize it. And posteriorly, we have the left margin of aorta and medial border of left psoas muscle. They all come in the posterior relationship of the fourth part of jejunum. Now, what is this ligament of Therites? Basically, it's a fibromuscular band. You can see here this fibromuscular band. It is supporting and suspending the duodenojejunal flexure. This flexure is the duodenojejunal flexure, where the duodenum is ending and it is beginning into the jejunum. It is starting. It is attached to the from the right crus of the diaphragm, and it increases the angle of the duodenojejunal flexure. Now jejunum, and now coming to the second part of the small intestine, we discussed till now. We have discussed the duodenum, all the parts of the duodenum. That is the first, second, and the third and the fourth part. Then we have the jejunum and the ileum. Jejunum and ileum, they are the mobile parts of the small intestine. They all together, they form 80 into 20 feet. It is all together. It is forming. It's all together. It is 20 in feet, and it is suspended from the posterior abdominal wall by its mesentery. That is the mesentery of the small intestine as well. We can say it. So this is the mesentery which is suspending the jejunum as well as the ileum. Now you can see here the difference between the jejunum as well as ileum. So you can see that the ileum it has a very large surface area, while jejunum, as compared to the ileum, it does not have a large surface area. Now it has the arterial arcades. This also has the arterial arcades, but we again very clearly you can see that the surface area of the ileum is more as compared to the jejunum. Now you can see there are differences in terms of jejunum and ileum. So the jejunum, it has a very thicker wall and it has these plia circularis, which are the muscles. But in case of the ileum, the wall is thin and also it has these spire patches. While jejunum, it does not have these spire patches. So now coming to the differences in both in terms of jejunum and ileum. Jejunum, it is the upper part and the left part of the intestinal area, while ileum, it's the lower and the right part of the intestinal area. Jejunum, as I told you before, it's a thick wall, while ileum, it is thin wall. Jejunum, the lumen of the jejunum is wider and it is thick, but it is empty. While the ileum, the lumen of the ileum, it's narrow and it is loaded. Now jejunum, it is more vascular. Ileum, it's less vascular because it has more surface area. And now the jejunum, it has more large, thick and leaf-like villi, but the ileum, it has less short finger-like villi. In terms of jejunum, the spire patches are absent, whereas the ileum, it has the spire patches. Now you can see here in this very clearly the mesentery of the small intestine. Now this hole is the mesentery of the small intestine, which is marked here. Now this hole is the mesentery of the small intestine, you can see here. And this is the ileocecal junction. That is ileum will become cecum. That is the small intestine will turn into the large intestine, this area. This area of the small intestine where the ileum ends will convert into cecum, that is the large intestine of the stomach. The large intestine will begin from this side. And you can also very clearly see here that in this root of the mesentery of the small intestine, the superior mesenteric artery is present here. So the content of the mesentery of the small intestine is really very important because it contains the artery within it, that is the superior mesenteric artery. Now coming to the blood supply of the duodenum and jejunum and ileum. So the blood supply of duodenum is a bit different from the jejunum and ileum. So duodenum, it is supplied by the superior and the inferior pancreatoduodenal arteries. So you can it's very beautiful that everything is so organized in our body that it has its own importance. And jejunum and ileum, it is supplied by the superior and the mesenteric artery. Now you can see here very clearly all the branches are mentioned here. This part of the stomach you can see is the jejunum. This part of the stomach which is curved is the jejunum. And then when the jejunum it will convert into ileum when it comes here. Because here you can see that how did I recognize? Because you can see the vessel, the arcade. The arcade, it has a wide surface area in cases of ileum, but it has a smaller surface area in cases of jejunum. That is how I identified. And you will also have to do the same thing. Now, ultimately, the venous supply of whole of the small intestine will drain into the portal vein. It will start from the superior mesenteric vein, draining ultimately into the portal vein. Then coming to the lymphatic drainage of the duodenum, it begins from the pancreatoduodenal nodes, that is similar to the artery, going to the hepatic lymph nodes, and then ultimately it will drain into the celiac nodes. And in case of the jejunum and ileum, as it is supplied by the mesenteric artery, superior mesenteric artery, so the similar nodes, that is mesenteric nodes, draining into superior mesenteric nodes and aortic nodes, which will ultimately drain into the celiac nodes. Now, the nerve supply of the small intestine, it is supplied by the sympathetic as well as the parasympathetic. So for very simple remembrance, you can remember easily that almost all of the organs, they have the parasympathetic supply from the vagus nerve. The sympathetic supply is from T9 to T11 nerves. Because of the sympathetic supply, what happens with the small intestine? The motility of the small intestine is decreased. The secretions of the small intestine, they are decreased, and it shows motor response to the sphincters. Now, the parasympathetic is the opposite of sympathetic nervous system. It is by the vagus nerve. It increases the motility, it increases the secretion, and it causes relaxation of the sphincters. And because of the relaxation of the sphincter, the contents from the ileum will flow into the cecum. Now this whole part you can see here is the ileum. This is the first part of the duodenum, the second part, the third part, the fourth part of the duodenum. Then it becomes this whole is the jejunum. Then comes the ileum. Now this whole is the ileum, which is opening is becoming into cecum. Now this whole part is the cecum. Of the stomach, cecum of the large intestine. So is it clear till here, this part? Can anyone quickly repeat it for me, just for the summary purpose? Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Deebalina. No problem. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Small intestine, it has three main parts: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum.
Hmm.
Duodenum got four parts.
Hmm.
Part that is the first part. It is 2 inches. Then we got the descending part. It is 3 inches. Then the horizontal part, third part, 4 inches, and the smallest one is the fourth part, that is 1 inch. So the
Hmm.
whole duodenum is 10 inches,
Hmm.
and it starts from the pylorus of the stomach.
Hmm. I think there's a bit of connectivity problem at your side today, Deebalina. Mona, would you like to continue from here? Rubina, would you like to continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure, please.
Ma'am, duodenum has four parts. First part that is begin from the pylorus of the stomach, and it is till the second part of the stomach. It is lying in the it is lying in the transpyloric plane, and it has the anteriorly liver lies in front of it, and that is the caudate lobe of the liver, and the
Hmm.
gallbladder posterior to it is the lesser sac. Superior is the opening of the lesser sac, that is the epiploic foramen, and inferiorly the head of pancreas is present.
Hmm.
The second part of the duodenum is after the first part of the duodenum, and it has the medial relationship is the head of the pancreas, and in the lateral relationship it has the um,
Hmm.
in front of it is anterior to it lies the liver, and liver, and inferior posterior posteriorly lies the kidney and ureter, and medially there is opening of the bile duct and the pancreatic duct also, that is the
Hmm.
ampulla of Vater for
Yeah.
the major pancreatic duct and the bile duct, and for accessory pancreatic duct, minor accessory pancreatic duct, we have the opening as well, and then we have the in front of it transverse colon also lies, and lateral to it is the ascending colon.
Hmm.
The third part of the colon is the largest part. Third part of the duodenum is the largest part, and it has the front relationship is the jejunum and the mesentery of the small intestine, and posteriorly aorta, inferior
Hmm.
vena cava, right kidney, and the psoas muscle, and superior to it lies the pancreas, and inferiorly the coils of the jejunum,
Hmm.
and the fourth part is moving upward, and it is forming the duodenojejunal flexure, and it has the same relations as anterior, just like the third part of the duodenum, that is the coils of the jejunum and the mesentery, and posterior to it lies the aorta and the left psoas muscle, because it is lying more on the left side, and there is also present a peritoneal fold, that is ligament of Treitz, which
Hmm.
attached to the right cross of the diaphragm.
Yeah.
And then we have the second part, that is the jejunum. Its length is 2.5 meter, and it is a more mobile part, and it is lying more on the left side of the abdominal cavity, and while the ileum is 3.5 meter long, and it is lying more on the right side of the abdominal cavity, and the jejunum is thick walled. It is thick walled, and the ileum is thin walled, and jejunum is mostly hollow, and the ileum is loaded, and jejunum has the Pear's patches. Pear's patches are absent in jejunum. In ileum they are present, and jejunum is more vascular, and ileum is has the less vascularity, and the villi are leaf-like villi are present in jejunum, and finger-like small villi are present in the ileum. And then the nerve supply, blood supply of the duodenum is the pancreatoduodenal superior and inferior pancreatoduodenal artery, and the blood supply of the jejunum and ileum is a superior mesenteric artery. And the nerve supply is the in the duodenum. It has the same superior and inferior duodenal
Yeah.
nerve vein
Superior.
supply.
Hmm.
Superior mesenteric vein that drain
Yeah.
into the ultimately drain
Good.
into the portal vein. And
Yes.
nerve supply is the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is all mostly include vagus nerve, and the sympathetic nerve supply is from T10 to T11, and T9 to T11. And the sympathetic nerves basically control it, decreases the motility, it constricts the sphincters, and it will decrease the secretion, while the opposite will be the where is parasympathetic. That is, it will increase the motility, it will increase the secretion, and it will relax the sphincter, so the movement of the food will increase from the duodenum to the ileum.
Yes. Yeah. You've explained us very well done, Ravina. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Just one thing, I'll just correct it. I didn't interrupt you in between because then you will lost your temper. So
Yes,
just
ma'am.
one thing, yeah, in the second part of the duodenum, in the anteriorly we have the transverse colon as well as the small intestine. Both of them are there in the anterior relationship. Otherwise, rest
Okay.
of it you explained us really very well and beautifully.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem. So now moving to the next part of the abdominal organ, we have the large intestine. So large intestine, it's a part which is extending from the ileum and it will end to the anus. Now this large intestine, it has a special property that it is part of the abdominal cavity as well it is part of the pelvic cavity. So this part of the large intestine, it has cecum, it has appendix, the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and the descending colon. They all form the part of the abdominal cavity, while the sigmoid colon, it's a part of the sigmoid colon, it comes in the pelvic cavity, while rest of the part of the large intestine, it's the content of the abdominal cavity. Now, the function of the large intestine, that its property is that it will cause absorption of the water, electrolytes, and will store the undigested material until it can be expelled from the body as feces through the anus and the rectum. Now coming to the difference, that what are the differences between small and the large intestine. So the first major difference is that the small intestine has 3 parts, while large intestine, it has six major parts. It is further divided into 6 major parts. And then in terms of the histology, how can we divide the small intestine and the large intestine? It has the small intestine, it has no circulations, while the large intestine, the circulations are present. In the small intestine, there will be no tinea coli. But in the large intestine, the tinea coli, they will be present. Now, what are these tinea coli? They are the small accessory parts. If we consider this as a small intestine, so this small part is the tinea coli, which is present in case of large intestine, but will be absent in cases of tinea coli. So if a diagram is there in front of you, you can very easily identify whether it is a small intestine or a large intestine, because the tinea coli will be present in cases of large intestine. There will be no appendix epiphylloi in cases of a small intestine, while the large intestine, there will be presence of appendix epiphylloi. The small intestine, the major part of the small intestine, it is mobile, while the large intestine, majority of the part, it is fixed. In cases of the small intestine, the villi will be present, while in large intestine, the villi are absent. The presence of the villi will make sure that the small intestine has a large surface area. And the small intestine, it also has the transverse fold. When we cut it in a transverse section and look it into them under the microscope, we can find the transverse folds, which are there as a permanent, while in cases of large intestine, these transverse folds, they are present, but they are transitory. Now, the first part of the large intestine is the cecum. The cecum, it is that part of the large intestine which lies below the level of the junction of the ileum, and it continues or forms the beginning point of the large intestine. It's a blind-ended pouch that is situated in the right iliac fossa. So the cecum is the content of the right, is the anatomical position is right iliac fossa. The length of the cecum, it is 6 centimeter long, and it is completely covered with peritoneum. It possesses a considerable amount of mobility, although the cecum, it does not have its own mesentery. So can anyone tell me, is it a cecum a retroperitoneal, intraperitoneal organ? Which type of organ is cecum? Anyone? Who would like to tell me that is cecum intraperitoneal, non retroperitoneal? Which type of organ is cecum? No one would like to tell me? No any guesses from your side? So basically the cecum, it's an organ which has its no mesentery, and it's retroperitoneal. Now on the posterior medial side of the cecum is the appendix. Now this term, again it's a very same revision, that terminal part of the ileum, it enters into the large intestine at the junction of the cecum, and this cecum then it continues as the ascending colon. Now this opening, it is provided with two folds or lips which forms as the ileocecal valve. So what is this ileocecal valve basically? So if we consider this as the ileum, and from here the cecum, from here it converts into cecum. So this point, it forms as a valve here. That this valve is known as the ileocecal valve. which can control the opening of the ileum into the cecum for the contents or the material to pass from the ileum into the cecum. That is the importance. And on the medial side of the posterior and the medial side of the cecum will lie a very small vermiform appendix. So this appendix, it communicates with the cavity of the cecum through an opening which is located below and behind the ileocecal opening. So this is the ileocecal opening and it is lying below and behind the ileocecal opening. Now coming to the relationships of the cecum. Anteriorly, the cecum, it has the coil of a small intestine. Sometimes there can be part of greater omentum as well. And as the cecum lies in the right iliac lesion, so the presence of anterior abdominal wall in the right iliac region. Posteriorly of the cecum, we have the psoas muscle, we have the iliacus muscle, the femoral nerve, the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh, and posterior medially, we also have the stomach. In the posterior medial relationship of the cecum, we have the appendix. That is appendix, which is commonly found behind the cecum, as well as it is found on the medial side of the cecum. So appendix, it arises from the cecum on its medial side. So we can say it is posterior medially for the appendix. Now you can see here, this part is the cecum and this is the ileocecal valve. That is, this opening is the ileocecal valve. This is the ileum, which is then which has been this has been magnified just for the explanation to see this where the ileocecal valve is. This is the ileocecal valve. And you can see here these tinea coli are present, and these are the appendicopoli, epiploid that are present here. And from the cecum will start from the posterior medial side is the appendix that is starting. And this cecum, it will then convert into ascending colon. Now this vermiform appendix, it's a worm like tubular diverticulum, and it arises from the posterior medial wall of the cecum 2 centimeters below the ileocecal junction. Now this appendix, it has its own mesentery. That is, it is suspended by a mesoappendix. The large part of the, it's the part of the large gut, but it is devoid of tinea coli, the saculations, and the appendic epiphylloi. Now the length of the appendix, it can be very small from 2 centimeters up to 20 centimeters in length. Now appendix, it has parts like base, it has the body, the tip, and the mesoappendix. That is the mesentery of the appendix. Now can anyone tell me what is McBurney's point? Anyone, please. Seher, would you like to try? What is McBurney's point? Mona, would you like to try?
Yes.
Yes, Seher, please go ahead. You've been so silent in the group. Why? I want you all to be active more.
It's a point from 2/3 of the in between the 2/3 of the umbilicus and and between the two umbilicus and 2/3 of the 2/3 of the umbilicus, midpoint of the mid clavicular line, and 2/3 of the umbilicus, one third of the
anterior superior.
Anterior superior, yeah.
Yeah, anterior superior iliac spine. So that point is known as the McBurney's point. You can see here very clearly that as Seher told us that this is the point which is 2/3 of the from the umbilicus, and This is the 2/3 from the umbilicus and 1/3 from the anterior superior iliac spine. This point is the McBurney's point. And it is whenever there is appendicitis, it is the point where you can feel the maximum tenderness. And this sign is also called as Rowling sign. Now, appendix can have many positions. So I'm just going to tell you, I'm telling you all of them, but you can but as much as you can remember is okay. The most common one you need to remember and the most rare one you need to remember. The most common one is the retrocecal position of the appendix. That is, you can see here. I'm going to. This is the retrocecal position of this appendix. This is the most common one. And when it is lying on the mid-inguinal point, which we cannot see here, it's a very rare type. Or if this is the cecum, and we consider this as a cecum, and when we in the 6 o'clock position, this point is a rare type or the rare position of the appendix. So we have few, that is 11 o'clock or subcecal position, which is 2%. We have 12 o'clock position, the most common one. Another name for it is a retrocecal one or retrocolic. Then we have 2 o'clock position, which is pre-ilial, or it can be post-ilial as well. One of the rare types is the 3 o'clock position of the appendix, which is promontoric type, a rare, and it's in horizontal position one. Then the appendix can be found in the pelvic cavity. That is one of the positions of the appendix, which is 30 degrees to the uterine tube, and it can be in relationship to the ovary as well. The very rare type is the 6 o'clock position of the stomach, the 6th and the 12th o'clock of the position of the stomach. 12th o'clock is the most common one. The rare type is the 6 o'clock position. A very rare type of the position of the stomach. So you need only to remember 2 of them. The most common is the 12 o'clock and the least common is the 6 o'clock position. Then from the cecum will continue the ascending colon. Now you can very easily identify where the cecum is, because you can see this small part is an appendix. So appendix, in the posterior medial relationship of the cecum lies the appendix. So this whole part is the cecum, and from here these are this middle line which is going in between the whole of the large intestine. You can see here it is the tinea coli that is going on, and these yellow ones that you can see here, these are the epiphyllae. These are the epiphyllae you can see here. Now this cecum, it is in continuation with the ascending colon, and it forms, now this ascending colon, it will become in this position. It's the transverse colon. That is the horizontal position. It's the transverse colon. So this point, when it turns this ascending colon into the transverse colon, this point is known as the right colic flexure. And when the transverse colon, it converts into the descending colon, this point is known as the left colic flexure. So we have 2 flexures in terms of large intestine. One is the right colic flexure, where ascending colon will turn into transverse colon, and we have the left colic flexure, from where the transverse colon will become into the descending colon. And then descending colon will convert into sigmoid colon. Then we will have the rectum, and the lowermost part is the anus or the anal canal. So ascending colon, from where it is beginning, it's the position. It is upward continuation of the cecum. It's an upward continuation which is ending at the point of the right colic flexure, and below this part lies the liver, just below the liver. This part of the ascending colon, it is measuring 5 inches in long. It is covered with the peritoneum anteriorly and on the sides. The paracolic gutters are found on both the sides. Now here you will find the paracolic gutter on this side as well as on this side, where the fluid can be collected. These are the two common sites of the fluid collection. Now coming to the relationship of the ascending colon. Anteriorly, we have the coils of the small intestine, the greater omentum, as well as the anterior abdominal wall. In the posterior relationship, we have the iliacus muscle, the iliac crus, the quadratus lumborum, and the origin of transverse abdominis muscle. And also, there will be the lower pole of the right kidney, and also two nerves they are passing from the posterior relationship of the ascending colon. That is the iliohypogastric and the ilioinguinal nerves. They are all crossing behind the ascending colon. Now next, from the ascending colon, starting from the right colic flexure to the left colic flexure. From the right colic flexure, this is the let's suppose this is the cecum, this is the transverse colon. This is the ascending colon. Now we'll begin the transverse colon, extending from the right colic flexure up to the left colic flexure, and it will convert downwards into descending colon. So transverse colon, it's an extent from the right colic flexure to the left colic flexure. Its length is around 20 inches. It is covered with peritoneum, completely covered with peritoneum, and it has its own mesentery. The name of the mesentery will be transverse mesocolon. So in whatever the organ has its own mesentery, the name will be similar to that. That is transverse mesocolon, or transverse colon has its own mesentery. That was the mesentery of the transverse colon. Now coming to the descending colon. It is extending from the left colic flexure to the pelvic brim and below. Then it will continue as a sigmoid colon. The descending colon, it is measuring 10 inches, and the peritoneal covering, it is covering the front as well as the sides of the descending colon. There will be paracolic gutters present, like as in terms of the ascending colon on both the sides. The right as well as the left side, both sides there will be presence of the paracolic gutters in which the fluid can be collected. Now, first of all, in terms of relationships of the transverse colon, anteriorly, we will be having the greater omentum, the anterior abdominal wall, and transverse colon, it lies in the region of the umbilical as well as the hypogastric region. And posteriorly, we have the second part of duodenum, the head of the pancreas, the coils of the duodenum, and the ileum. Now, in the relationships of the descending colon, anteriorly, there will be coils of the small intestine, the greater omentum, and the anterior abdominal wall. So both of them, if you see here, in the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and the descending colon, the anterior relationship is similar to in three of them. Similar. And also posteriorly, as the descending colon is on the left side, so there will be lateral border of the left kidney, while the transverse abdominis muscle, the quadratus lumborum, iliacus muscle, iliacus crus, they will be similar. But as the descending colon is on the left side, so left psoas muscle will be there. There will be iliohypogastric and the ilioinguinal nerves, and the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh and femoral nerve, they also lie posteriorly. So the relationship is similar, just the extra thing is there that it is on the left side. So left psoas muscle will be there, and also the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh and femoral nerve. These three are extra things in the posterior relationship of the descending colon. Now the sigmoid colon. Now this part is the sigmoid colon. Now this whole part is the sigmoid colon, which is converting then, which is then turning into rectum and the anal canal. Now this sigmoid colon, It is the part of the pelvic cavity. But I have just taken here so that we can complete one whole as an organ. That is the reason that I've taken this sigmoid colon as a part to be for the completion. But this sigmoid colon, it's a part of the pelvic cavity. It is lying in the left iliac fossa and also in the pelvic cavity. It is measuring 15 inches. The sigmoid colon has its own peritoneum, that it is completely covered by peritoneum, and also it has its own mesentery, like the transverse mesocolon. That is, either it is also called as the pelvic mesocolon or sigmoidomesocolon. Anything you can call it. Now, in the relationships of the sigmoid colon, because sigmoid colon goes into the pelvic cavity, and pelvic cavity has also the male organs, the female organs. So there will be difference in the relationship that you need to remember. Very important is the relationship of the stomach bed that you need to be cramping up, and along with that, the relationship of the sigmoid colon. In the male, you will find the anti-urinary bladder, but in the female, there will be posterior surface of the uterus and upper part of the vagina. While the relationship of posteriorly to the sigmoid colon will be the rectum and sacrum in cases of both male and female. And also, the sigmoid colon is also related to the lower coils of the terminal part of the ileum. Now, coming to the blood supply of the large intestine or the colon, we can say a colon is now supplied by two main sources or the two main arteries. One of them is the superior mesenteric artery, which is the main supply of the midgut. And we have another, we have the inferior mesenteric artery, which is supplying the hindgut. The midgut and the hindgut, we are going to study when we are going to do embryology. Now, superior mesenteric artery, it has three divisions or it has three branches: the ileocolic artery, the right colic artery, and the middle colic artery. And inferior mesenteric artery, it has two branches, that is superior left colic artery and inferior left colic artery. So superior and inferior left colic artery, they are branches of inferior mesenteric artery, whereas ileocolic artery, right colic artery, and middle colic artery, they are all branches of the superior mesenteric artery, and the superior and the inferior mesenteric artery, they will ultimately drain into the main aorta, that is the main artery of the abdominal, or we can say that is abdominal aorta. Now the artery will be similar to the vein will be similar to the artery, that is superior and the inferior mesenteric vein. The lymph drainage will be epipoloic nodes, which will be draining the wall of the colons. The paracolic nodes, we have the intermediate nodes, we have the central nodes. But for the simplest and for the easy, you can remember that all the lymph supply of the colon, it will ultimately drain into the celiac lymph nodes. Now, coming to the nerve supply of the colon, we have the sympathetic nerve supply, we have the parasympathetic nerve supply. So sympathetic is from the greater splenic nerves and from the lesser splenic nerves. The parasympathetic supply is from the vagus nerve, which is providing the parasympathetic to the cecum, the ascending colon, and right 2/3 of the transverse colon. And then the remaining part of the colon, parasympathetic supply will be from the pelvic splenic nerves. That is the remaining 1/3 of the transverse colon, the descending colon, and the sigmoid colon. It will be supplied by the pelvic splenic nerves. So is it clear till here? Can anyone quickly revise for me this large intestine? Not the it's not the relationships, but just the quick summary. Sadaf, would you like to try? Mona? Anyone can try it, please. Noopur, would you like to try?
Ma'am, my background is very noisy.
Okay. No problem. No problem. Okay. Anyone? Robina, would you? No one would like to try? I'm waiting if anyone would like to try. Okay, if no one is trying, I'll do quickly that what is the some the about the large intestine. The large intestine, it is divided into four it's a part of the large intestine. It is divided into it has many parts. It almost six parts say they there for the large intestine. That is starting from the cecum, and cecum has on the posterior medial relationship of the cecum we have the appendix. Then we have an ascending colon followed by transverse colon, the descending colon, sigmoid, rectum, and then the anal canal. They all together they form the large intestine. Now the peritoneal cavity is covering the transverse colon, that is it has the transverse mesocolon as well as the sigmoid colon, that is sigmoido-mesocolon. And the structures of the large intestine which are not covered by peritoneum, they include the ascending and the descending colon. And for the cecum and the appendix, it may or it may not have its peritoneal covering. Now in terms of the appendix, it is in the posterior medial relationship of the cecum and it is measuring 2 centimeter in size. And the McBurney point, it's a point or it's a maximum site of the tenderness in cases of appendicitis. It's a point in 2/3 from the umbilicus and 1/3 from the anterior superior iliac spine. This point is the maximum site or the maximum site of tenderness of appendicitis pain. The most common position of the appendix is 12 o'clock position, and the least common is the 6 o'clock position. Then we have the ascending colon, which is the continuation of the cecum. It starts as a continuation of the cecum and it ends up to the right colic fracture. The ascending colon, it is covered with the peritoneum anteriorly as well as on the sides, but not inferiorly. And then we have the transverse colon and the descending colon. So this transverse colon is the part which is beginning from the right colic flexure up to the left colic flexure, and it is measuring 20 inches. It is covered by its own peritoneum and as well it has its own mesentery. The mesentery of the transverse mesocolon, it contains superior mesenteric artery. And then begins the descending colon. Descending colon, it will begin from the left colic flexure up to the pelvic brim, and then from the pelvic brim will begin as a sigmoid colon. This descending colon, it is covered with peritoneum in the front and on the sides, like the ascending colon. And then we have the sigmoid colon, which is in the pelvic cavity, and it is covered by its own peritoneum. It is covered not only by its peritoneum, but it also has its own mesentery as well. The important relationship of the sigmoid colon is that in the anterior relationship, in males, we have the urinary bladder, while in cases of female, we have posterior surface of uterus as well as upper part of the vagina in cases of female. And rectum and sigmoid, the rectum and sacrum, they form the posterior relationship of the sigmoid colon. The whole of the colon, it is supplied by superior mesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery. And in terms of venous supply, it's the counterpart of the artery, that is superior mesenteric vein and the inferior mesenteric vein. In terms of lymph node, all of the lymph nodes of the colon, they will drain ultimately into celiac lymph nodes. Then we have the nerve supply of the colon. It is supplied by the sympathetic nerve, that is greater and the lesser splenic nerves, while the parasympathetic, it is supplied by both the vagus nerve as well as the pelvic splenic nerves. The vagus nerve, it is supplying the cecum, the two ascending colon, and right 2/3 of the transverse colon. And then the pelvic splenic nerves, it is supplying 1/3 of the transverse colon, that is remaining 1/3, which is not supplied by the vagus nerve. We have the descending colon and then the sigmoid colon. So any questions still here? Okay, so who is going to take the first question? Who's going to take the first question? No one, we don't have any one active members today to take the question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, please. Yes.
Transpyloric level indicate pylorus of the stomach, duodenojejunal flexure, fundus of the gallbladder, renal hyla, and the neck of the pancreas, all of the above. Ma'am, one is A is correct because pylorus of the stomach is located at that point.
Yes.
Duodenojejunal flexure is also in the transpyloric.
Yes.
Fundus of the gallbladder. Gallbladder is also, ma'am, fundus of the gallbladder, it is also located in that area, transpyloric level, and renal hyla and neck of the pancreas is also in the, ma'am. So E is right, all of the above are
Yes.
in the transpyloric
Excellent.
plane.
Yeah, E is the correct answer, that in the transpyloric plane, all of these structures, they lie at the level of the transpyloric plane. Or any other structures that you can remember at the transpyloric plane?
Ma'am, the third part of the duodenum is located in this plane.
Yes. And? Okay, can you read us for us all this? I've just
Yes,
taken
ma'am.
this. Yeah.
In the structures crossed by transpyloric plane, L1 vertebra, pylorus, pancreatic neck, duodenojejunal flexure, fundus of the gallbladder, ninth costal cartilage, hyla of the kidney, origin of the portal vein, transverse mesocolon, second part of the duodenum, superior mesenteric artery origin, hilum of the spleen, and termination of the spinal cord.
Yes, so it is very important that you remember all the structures which are at the level of the transpyloric plane. Because sometimes you will have to choose in this question all the options were correct, but sometimes there will be one option that is correct only. So we'll have to choose accordingly.
Okay.
Rubina, will you take the next one also?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Mesentery is absent over esophagus, stomach, small bowel, transverse colon, duodenum.
Hmm.
Ma'am, esophagus?
Okay. We didn't study anything about esophagus.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So esophagus is out of question options.
Ma'am, not sure about it.
So what will you guess? Okay, make any guess. Any guess from anyone?
A and E, ma'am.
A or
And E.
E? Yeah, okay. Esophagus, it has its mesentery, but we didn't study it together because it's usually a part of the thoracic cavity or the chest. Esophagus maybe comes over there. Yes, you're very right that mesentery is absent in cases of duodenum, while rest of the organs like esophagus, stomach, small bowel, and the transverse colon, it has its own mesentery. Okay, Rubina, will you take the next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The short gastric arteries are branches of celiac artery, are branches of superior mesenteric artery, supply the lower part of the greater curvature of the stomach, supply the fundus of the stomach. Ma'am, it supply the fundus of the stomach.
Excellent. It
Please.
supplies the fundus of the stomach. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rubina.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Who's going to take the next one? Sarah, would you like to try? Anyone?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, please go ahead. Okay.
With respect to the region of abdomen, stomach is located within the right hypochondrium, left hypochondrium and umbilical region, left hypochondrium and epigastric region, left hypochondrium, umbilicus and epigastric region, right hypochondrium, umbilicus and epigastric region. The answer is left hypochondrium and epigastric region. C.
And where else it lies? The stomach.
Left.
Yes, you're right. Left hypochondrium, epigastrium, and
umbilical region.
Umbilical region. Excellent. So
D.
it's option D. Yeah, the left hypochondrium, umbilical, and the epigastric region. Sarah, will you take the next one also?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, great.
Which structure and organ lie anterior to the third part of the duodenum? Third part, the root of the mesentery of small intestine, right lobe of the liver, the greater curvature of stomach, the head of pancreas, the common bile duct. The head of the pancreas, D. No.
Okay, I will show you the relationship. Okay, third part of duodenum, so that you can choose from that. From the third part of duodenum. Okay, this is the third part of the duodenum.
Head of the pancreas.
No, where is in the anterior relationship you can see head of the pancreas. Head of the pancreas is the superior relationship.
Okay.
Should I take you back to the question?
Okay.
Yes.
Structure and organ lies anterior to the third part of the duodenum.
Mhm.
The root of the mesentery of the small intestine.
Yes, excellent. It's anterior to the third part of the duodenum. And what does it contains?
Mm.
It contains superior mesenteric vessels.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah,
Superior mesentery.
big vessel. So it's a very important relationship that in the third part of the duodenum anteriorly lies the root of the mesentery of the small intestine, which contains superior mesenteric vessels. And yes, Rubina and Nupu, you both are right in the chat box. Excellent. So any further questions do we have? Any questions from anyone? Most welcome, or any feedback you would like me to improve. No feedback? Okay, Nupur, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So so I would just tell almost one thing, that we have almost covered all the organs of the abdominal. We have almost covered all of the abdominal cavity. We have covered the pelvis. We are just remaining with the male and the female organs, and the main arterial supply, the venous supply. What are the branches of the main like aorta, the celiac trunk, and the nerve supply? These all are left in the part of the anatomy. Rest, we have covered everything in relation to anatomy. Just I think in 2 or 3 subsequent classes, we will be almost be done, finished with the anatomy. So what I want from all of you, you need to revise and you need to practice most of the questions. You need to post it into the group, because once you will put it, everyone will start discussing with you. And once you discuss, you will memorize it more and more. I will also try to post, but definitely you also need to post it with me, because together we are going to learn it. So any questions before we end? Okay, thank you so much everyone. Take care, good night, bye-bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.